Hi, Becky. I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A real pleasure to be able
Hi,
to speak to you
Sarah.
today. Maybe we could just kick off with a brief introduction to this incredible documentary, Fashion Reimagined. For people who don't know anything about it, what can they expect when they watch it?
Yeah, so Fashion Reimagined is a documentary that follows the sustainability journey of a very unique, inspiring designer called Amy Powney. Amy Powney has a really interesting background growing up off grid in the middle of the country in rural Lancashire. And when we meet her in the film, she's kind of at the height of her career and has won this big prize, the Vogue Designer Fashion Fund, which comes with a big cash award. And yet at the same time, she's increasingly troubled by the environmental impact of her industry. And so she decides to use the money to create her vision of a sustainable collection from field to finished garment. And that is the journey that we follow. And along the way, we get to follow this amazing trajectory where, she ends up being a leader in this space. And so that's really exciting and was unexpected in the filming of.
And I guess, in terms of where you first got involved, how did you first meet Amy? And at what moment did you decide, do you know what, this is actually going to work really well for the subject of the documentary? And kind of what was the journey you went on with her to bring it to screen?
Yeah, it's a great question. I love this question. So I met Amy in 2017. I was working for a production company in London called Duck Productions, and Duck specializes in creating short form filmed content for fashion brands. So we were working with all kinds of fancy designers like Manolo Blahnik and, brands like Cartier, and doing a lot of work for London Fashion Week. And one of my assignments was to cover the Vogue Designer Fashion Fund. And Amy was the winner that year. And so that's how I met her. I filmed, the awards ceremony, which is actually how the film opens now. That was not, I didn't know I was starting to film a documentary at the time. But I also did some filming with Amy at her house. And we were in her living room, and I asked her what was next in her career. And she told me that she was on this mission to create a sustainable collection from field to finished garment. And she wanted to meet the sheep that were in her wool, and she wanted to meet the cotton pickers in her cotton. And that was really a light bulb moment for me, because I had been on my own sustainability journey for many years at that point. I was a freelance editor for a long time and worked on an environmental documentary called Revolution in 2011 that was about, climate change and the collapse of the oceans. And that really, really opened my eyes to what's happening on this planet. And I've seen the world through a sustainability lens ever since. And so I had made a lot of changes in my personal life. But by 2017, I was really feeling like I needed to do something bigger and needed to use my skills as a filmmaker to do that, and was kind of, searching for that project. And so when I met Amy and she told me she was going to go on this mission and she was going to South America and to Turkey, I was like, that is it. That is the project. And so I honestly knew pretty much right away. Amy is such an impressive person, sustainability achievements aside anyways, what she's managed to do in the fashion industry, coming from where she does with no connections, no money, moving to London on her own, working her way up, from intern at a respected label, Mother of Pearl, all the way up to creative director. That in itself, and then winning this award, is so impressive. So I kind of knew already that she was like an amazing, strong character to follow. And very quickly realized that like she was strong enough to carry this film and to be like an amazing on-ramp for people for this, vital issue.
I think that's what's really amazing about the documentary, because it's as much about her and her journey, and kind of maybe, as you say, coming as more of an outsider into the industry, maybe gives her a fresh perspective and seeing her background. But I wonder, I mean, in the same way that the premise of what she was trying to achieve doesn't feel like it should be that difficult, just to be able to trace where you're getting materials from to build a more sustainable brand. I guess you yourself didn't know exactly the journey you were going to go on following her doing that. So was there a lot of surprises along the way, and what might have been some of the highlights and the challenging moments?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of a bit of a detective story in some ways. And yeah, I was really, really surprised by how challenging it was. I mean, the first trip that we took was to Uruguay, and it just seemed wonderful. We met Pedro, and we saw beautiful sheep ranches and sheep that were treated so well. And the sustainability credentials at his company are incredible. He just ticks every box and is really the real deal. So great, done. We're going to use this wool, and we're going to get these garments created in Uruguay. And as you see in the film, that's not the case at all. Um, Fashion supply chains are so complex, and partly because of the mass move to Asia in the 80s and 90s, a lot of local industries, like the industry in Uruguay, has collapsed, and so they only have the beginning part. And so we're in a situation where there's like many countries involved in a supply chain, and you do like this bit here, you get your wool from the sheep over here. Then you travel to China to spin the wool into yarn. Then you go to Italy to make the fabric. And that side of things, I mean, I couldn't have imagined in my wildest dreams how many steps there are in making a garment, and how difficult it is if you don't just follow the system to like piece together your own supply chains. I mean, it's almost impossible, especially for a small brand like Mother of Pearl, who don't have what we call purchasing power. Why should factories change their practices for a small brand like Mother of Pearl, who's only buying, 100 garments? Maybe if it was a big brand, there'd be more impact. But yeah, I mean, it was mind blowing how difficult their journey was.
One of the things that really strikes me is how beautiful it looks, which feels very fitting in order to kind of be noticed and taken, the awareness to be raised within the fashion industry. So was that something very important to you? Almost for it to be very educational. I think the fashion industry, but also regular people that buy clothes like myself, are so ignorant or very much in denial about the reality of it. So by putting it together in that way, it makes it so you can't ignore it, because it's just put there so plainly, and the complexity is taken out of the issue, so people can really see how starkly it's making an impact on the environment.
Well, yeah, I mean, thank you so much for that compliment. The DP was Daniel Goetz, and he did an incredible job. And this was my first feature film as director. It was his first feature film as a DP, and he did a beautiful job. And, if we're speaking to a fashion audience and to people who love clothes, I think it's very important that it look a certain way, that the production value be as high as possible. And of course, we want to honor Amy and her beautiful clothes. And in terms of the impact that I hope we can have, I hope by sharing, peeling back the curtain, pulling back the curtain on how our clothes are made and the environmental impact of that process and the impact on people and on animals. I hope that it inspires people to be more thoughtful about their relationship with clothes, to buy less and more thoughtfully. And I hope that it empowers people to make better decisions in the face of so much greenwashing by very powerful brands. I'm thinking of fast fashion brands that put out things like conscious lines. People get confused. Is this real? Is this just marketing? And I hope that in providing, the complexity and the holistic view that Amy had on sustainability, that people feel more savvy and able to make better choices.
And sort of inspired by Amy herself, because you think, well, actually, if she wouldn't take no for an answer and really wanted to dig down to find out the truth of what was going on, maybe we can take a leaf out of that in our books, even if it is doing supermarket shopping, whether it's clothes shopping, whether it's anything, that we should be asking those questions and not just being passive consumers.
Absolutely. And Amy always loves to say, if the girl from the caravan can do it, so can you. Um, so yeah, no, thank you for bringing up that point about Amy's personal story. I hope that people are inspired by this girl, who grew up off grid, and who was quite self-conscious about it for a long time. And it was actually when she embraced who she was and stood up and told the fashion industry who it was, that she actually gained more recognition than she ever had in the rest of her career. It's like she found her superpower. Her difference was her superpower. So yeah.
I'm out of time, but thank you so much for sharing all that with me. Cannot wait for everyone else to see this incredible documentary. And let's hope that, films like this can prompt conversations, and we'll see change in the future.
That is the hope, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me.